So hello and welcome to a new for you, but not new for me, project car. What you see in front of us here is my 1997 Mazda RX7 FD3S Type RS edition. Being a 1997 model, this car falls in the version 4 category for the RX7s, which is the models released from 96 to 99. And since it's a Type RS, it came from factory with a few additional improvements, such as bigger brakes, 4.3 diff ratio, and different suspensions, to name a few. Also, since this car is a Japanese import, it is actually badged as Infini. There is not one Mazda badge on this car, but of course pretty much everyone knows this car as a Mazda anyway. Now let's just talk a brief history of this exact car, as well as some plans and ideas that I have for it. And just to keep expectations at a reasonable level, there's another car in the background that sounds like this one. This is going to be what I would describe as a mild restoration to OEM plus levels. There aren't going to be any crazy wide body kits or air suspension going on this car. I essentially just want to make it a bit nicer than it was when it was new. So the first few years of this car's life were clearly quite nice. Since when it came up for auction in 2012, it had around 45,000 kilometers on the clock and only one owner on the auction sheet. So considering that this car is a 1997 model, the fact that it did 45,000 kilometers in, 15 years, is quite remarkable. However, the mileage racked up very quickly from there, and by 2017 at the final auction in Japan, it was just over 100,000 kilometers. Also, I do have all the service documentation from Japan with this car, so I've been able to verify that the mileage is indeed true and that the odometer hasn't been swapped out. So let's get started with the exterior walk around of this car. Everything you see in terms of body panels is original. Some areas have had paintwork done in the past, not by me, especially noticeable on the passenger door over here. And since we're around this side, that's broken also. Anyway, as mentioned, everything else is stock. I guess we could also count these 17-inch BBS wheels as stock, as they were an option on the RX7 Type RZ and have just been swapped onto this car. So I've wrapped them in some Toyo Proxy R888 semi-slicks, which I'm quite happy with, and also surprisingly not too bad when driving in the rain. But I live in South Africa and it doesn't rain much here anyway, as you can see. So moving around to the back of the car, you'll see something that's obviously not stock already. This enormous exhaust over here. So this is a 101mm straight pipe exhaust, right from the engines all the way back out here. Now there is this HKS piece in here. Note, I'm going to say HKS in inverted commas because I don't think it's genuine. Regardless, this car is very loud, and while I did want to actually film some of this video while driving it, you probably won't be able to hear anything I'm saying except for the sound of the exhaust. Exterior plans. So firstly, the paint needs to be sorted out. Pretty much the entire top half of the car has got sun damage and it's faded all the way from the bonnet all the way across the roof to about a level over here, and including the spoiler. So some people have mentioned leave it because of the patina and whatnot, but as mentioned, this car already has had some paintwork done in the past and I think it looks just a bit crap in general. So I want to have this entire car resprayed. This is a factory color, it's called Silverstone Metallic, and we'll just keep it in this color. In terms of actual changes, I want to change the front bumper and rear wing to the facelifted 99 spec versions. And this is quite a common change for older RX7s. And since I'm going to be fitting the OEM Mazda parts, I don't see it damaging the value very much. Now just in terms of parts availability, you can still buy the 99 spec bumper from Mazda, whereas the wing will have to be bought second-hand on an auction website. So next up, wheels. So these current ones look pretty good on the car in my opinion, and for the time being, they can stay. All they need is a light refurb and they'll be good to go. However, a future plan is to maybe change them. I have always liked the look of the Enkei RFP1s and would like to get a set, but I'm not sure if that's maybe too played out on an RX7, you know, kind of like TE37s on all Japanese cars. So let me know what you think about that. Sort of related to the topic of wheels I've just spoke about, this car is on Night Sports suspension. So I only found this out when the car arrived with a certificate for their parts. But as it is, I have no complaints for how the car rides and handles and how it sits. So I'm not going to do anything to touch the suspension. Alright, now time to look under the hood or bonnet, depending on where in the world you're from. So this car is still a 13B rotary engine, except I have converted it from twin turbo to single turbo. You can see there's the massive Holset H1E turbo sticking out over here. I bought this car in a project car state. It was sort of working, but not really. So when we eventually dug into the engine, we found out that it was toast and needed to be redone. I was adamant that despite the flaws, the rotary engine had to stay. A few people were saying, no, just throw the 13B out and put in a 2JZ or a V8 or K20 Honda engine. But I figured half the appeal of the RX7 is the rotary engine, so that remained. Now, all of this was done before I even thought about making YouTube videos for project cars. So unfortunately, I don't have anything interesting to show you guys here. What I can tell you though, is you've probably heard of rotaries in terms like bridge ports and street ports and peripheral ports. Well, we've street ported this engine. I think I'm going to make a few casual driving videos with the car, so if you're interested in hearing how it sounds, stick around for that. In terms of changes to do here, well, this entire engine bay could use a bit of a freshen up, to be honest, if it makes sense. For example, this red paint on the turbo, hopefully you can see that there. It just looks horrible and I want to remove it and go with more of a cleaner silver finish. The wastegate, which is all the way down there somewhere, can't see it here, also needs to be replaced and is currently a no-name brand special, which I think is probably doing more harm than good. So not much to do in here in terms of modifications, but once these small issues have been sorted out, we'll hit the dyno and see what figures this car makes. And lastly, just on the topic of engines, so I'm running this car on an Adaptronic ECU. Now this was done quite a while ago, and that was before Adaptronic was absorbed into Holtec. So with those credentials behind them, I'm quite confident in this ECU, and it's never given me any issues, so I'm just going to keep it. Moving on to the interior. So what you see here is mostly entirely stock, with the exception of this smaller Infinity wheel. So the stock wheel is a bigger Momo one, which I still have. There was also an aftermarket air fuel gauge mounted here, but since it stopped working, I've removed it. I actually need to put a new one in. AFR is kind of important to know. But again, speaking of things that don't work, this car came with two ECUs, the stock ECU and an Apex ECU, hence this hand control over here. Now, I never used the Apex ECU and just went straight ahead with the Adaptronic one as I just spoke about, so that just stays there for decoration. So the only other non-stock item is this aftermarket head unit, which came in the car from Japan, and it included the biggest hits of 1997 CD. So I'm talking things like Bittersweet Symphony by the Verve, Breathe by the Prodigy, Around the World by Daft Punk, and Tub Thumping. You know that song where you get knocked down and get back up again? Yeah, all the classics. Anyway, back to the car. Everything else you see here is entirely stock. So the seats, the shifter, the dashboard with the gauges, and even the floor mats and pedals. Speaking of the floor mats, I like these ones. I'm not too sure what the correct name is for them, but I'll just call them the Cherry Blossom floor mats. Now they are apparently quite rare, so I'm thinking of just giving these a good clean and storing them in the garage, and just putting some generic ones in for normal day driving, and then I'll just put these in when it's time to take the car to a show. Now, cool things that came in this car from Japan. It came with this emergency flare, which I doubt works. Knowing my luck, it'll probably blow up if I try to use it. There is a fire extinguisher here, which I put there, but I do need to mount it a little bit better, because hashtag race car. But by far my favorite feature of the entire interior is right up here. If you don't know what this is, it's an electronic toll collection system. And every time I start the car, it tells me in Japanese that there's no card inserted, which I will demonstrate now. Anyway, changes for the interior. So the biggest change I want to make in the interior are seats. Now I'm 6'1" tall, and while I do fit in the car, I could definitely use a little bit more space. In the theme with trying to keep it OEM plus, I was looking at installing a set of the Recaro pole positions with some different seat rails. Since they are very similar to the Recaros found in the limited edition Spirit Type R, but without the stupidly insane price tag that those seats come on now. Fortunately, I have seen a few sets of pole position seats available locally for a good price, so I'm going to look at buying a set soon. Also, I mentioned set because I want both seats to match. I don't want a stock passenger seat and then a Recaro driver seat. They have to be the same. And with that, that's the end of our quick walk around for this mild restoration project. So if you've made it this far, then thanks for watching. And let me know in the comments below what you think of the car. So see you again soon.